There are three narratives which are going around as to how the current situation arose. The first narrative is that this is something that is totally indigenous. It's some sort of a popular uprising led by students who are protesting government quotas. This spiraled into an agitation against misgovernance and denial of democratic rights, fueled by indiscriminate police firing, resulting in more than 300 deaths, out of which 50 are students. So, in a democracy where 50 students are killed by police firing, one can understand what happens. So, you have popular discontent which boils over and the regime is overthrown. So, this is narrative one. Narrative two, that this is a foreign conspiracy. The United States needs influence in the Bay of Bengal, specifically over the states of Malacca, in Myanmar, and with Bangladesh, to further its Indo Pacific strategy and to counter China. I'll talk about China and Pakistan in between also and later specifically at the end. So, here the United States engineers another sort of color revolution, puts its own man there, Dr. Mohammad Yunus, who is well known in the West and is close to the Obamas and the Clintons. Allegedly, USA is trying to establish a base in Bangladesh. This, of course, is very old. This story is very old. It could not establish it till date. And there are all sorts of rumors as to who agreed to give it a base provided they were in power. So that story continues that the Americans were looking to establish a base, were putting pressure on her government. And that they were doing. They were sanctioning officials, they were denying visas, there were recurrent lectures on human rights, denial of democracy, and things of that nature. Sheikh Hasina was very adept at playing off China versus USA versus India. And if you remember last year during the BRICS meeting, she had also applied to join BRICS. That is a different configuration altogether. Though Bangladesh was not given membership, the fact is that she did apply and the Americans would have taken her. There is also talk that maybe India decided to intercede on her behalf to an extent that when President Biden came to Delhi in September last year for the final G20 summit, that is when she and President Biden and her daughter, they had a selfie moment together. Though Bangladesh is part of the Belt and Road, on a recent visit to China, immediately after a visit to India, she requested around $5 billion in aid of various types, loans, grants, to reduce the debt that Bangladesh has with China. She got only $137 million, which now too is obviously withheld. Also, for operationalization of the Mongla port, she gave the contract to India. Similarly, for development of the Teesta Basin project, we have a problem with the Teesta waters, but then we have this alternative where we're developing the Teesta Basin, part of which is in Bangladesh. That contract was to go to China, but she gave it to India. So obviously, the Chinese aren't too happy about it. And remember that the Chinese have got tremendous investments in Bangladesh. Their investments in terms of capital are definitely more than ours because they are at a different league as of now. Here the question is that they're a small country, we are a large country, we have a strategic autonomy. They obviously have very, very limited autonomy. As far as Pakistan is concerned, again, part of this conspiracy theory, it's been trying to get a foothold in Bangladesh for various reasons, part historical, part to strengthen its Islamic credential, part to, again, as part of its anti-India policy. And there are rumors that, I just read out, a former US official met Pakistani Army Chief Al-Sim Munir in the US after ISI operatives met Tariq Rahman, who is former Prime Minister Khalida Zia's son, in London and in Saudi Arabia. Also, that the ISI funded Islamic Chhatra Sangh of the Jamaat-e-Islami for this regime change. These are all theories. The UK, whose foreign policy generally moves in parallel with the Americans, you are aware, this has hosted Tariq Rahman for so long, Khalida's son, despite Bangladesh's request for his extradition because he is one of the prime accused in the murder plot against Sheikh Hasina in the early 2000s. Tariq Rahman has now landed up in Dhaka. Also, if you see the credentials of members of the interim government, led by Professor Yunus, many of them have linkages with the West. Of course, that is neither here nor there because in any case, people in Bangladesh who are well educated, most of them are educated abroad, Those who don't have too much of money, they come to India. That is the same. So this is as far as the conspiracy theory is concerned. Now the third point, the third narrative, yes, the roots are indigenous, but they've been very shrewdly fanned and manipulated by forces that are pro-BNP, fundamentalist, anti-liberation, anti-Awami League, with some help from outside sources or countries. The violence was fanned, the establishment was brought to its knees, 42 policemen killed in police in firing in clashes, the toppling of Sheikh Mujib's statue, the breaking of that famous Dhaka racecourse surrender ceremony, that entire statue which was made, that has also been broken. It shows the antecedents of this mob. The problem with Bangladesh is that the duopoly of two major political parties, Awami League 35%, BNP 35%, either one which is in power decimates the other. So that sort of thing goes on. We see glimmers of that happening even today, when many are being arrested and put in the same prisons where the Awami League used to put its prisoners. Here now it's a question of the new government's credibility. While they're making the right noises, you see daily shifts of secretaries. Recently, the Home Minister, who'd been appointed for just about a week, was shifted to jute and textiles. He's a Brigadier General, I'm forgetting his name, because he made some pro-Awami remarks as regarding the Awami League contribution to the liberation war. Now, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party has been reaching out to many countries consciously over the last years, trying to display its democratic credentials. Instead of the anti-liberation one, it's been trying to change its own narrative. So even if there is no direct proof of involvement of foreign governments, that one will never have. Remember that there is a huge Bangladeshi diaspora in the USA and in the UK, which surely must have provided funding. Some of them must have provided funding. This diaspora has reached. There was an incident in the Bangladesh consulate in New York where people entered the consulate and removed the portrait of Sheikh Mujib. Here we are at a disadvantage because every symbol of India-Bangladesh relations, be it the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center or those statues we just spoke about, they are being vandalized. And to my mind, in this narrative, those students are just pawns. They are students. They are pawns in a larger game. This is reinforced by the composition of the interim government. While they all have professional credentials, BNP has been reaching out to many countries consciously over the last years, trying to, display democratic credentials and to change its own narrative. That the diaspora has got reach. Also, the composition of the interim government, you will find, while they're all professionally qualified, you will find that a few of them, I think 7 of them are supposed to be pro-BNP, in addition to one odd fundamentalist from the Hifazat-e-Islam, that is the party. So that is where we are as far as the conspiracy business is, as far as the 3 narratives are concerned. I personally go for the third narrative, but only time will tell. However, whatever be the facts, what we have to consider now is there is a new regime with which we have to do business. There is a former prime minister who is in exile in India. There are murder cases lodged against her, and there is a possibility of a formal request for her extradition. So that is the situation as of now. We have a high commission in Dhaka. We have 4 consulates across the country. The 5th one was coming up in Rangpur, which was agreed upon during the Sheikh Hasina's visit. We have so many countries, so many companies with projects there. We have so many people there. How is it that we didn't see all this happening? Were we overconfident? So this is where the narratives go. In the current crisis, the army has stayed neutral, though the chief is a close relative of Sheikh Hasina. He is married to her cousin, I think. Now, Chief General Waqaruzzman has done 2 long courses in the UK. He's done the Joint Services Staff College and he's done a Masters of Defence Studies from King's College, London. Unfortunately, he's not done his NDC in India. Otherwise, you'd have known him a little better. However, I could not find any record of his having done any course in Turkey or Pakistan, like many other officers in Bangladesh. Their officers go abroad for so many courses, and it's quite a routine thing for them, and many of them go to Turkey, Pakistan, other places. So he hasn't been there. He's been to UK twice. So neither has he displayed any fundamentalist tendencies till date. However, the army was initially employed in aid of civil authority. He's on record as having stated that the army was employed. There's an interview in the week in which he's quoted as having said that the army was employed in 31 situations in clashes with protesters. They've fired live bullets, they've fired rubber bullets. His later opting to stay neutral is possibly due to the feedback he received from his officers over time and last when he spoke to them in a gathering and gathered what exactly is happening. That's when he decided to stay neutral. And what did he achieve by this? He avoided a split in the army. He sensed the popular mood. He went along with the popular mood, so they were an army of the people again. At the same time, it is learned that he repeatedly told Sheikh Hasina situation is getting out of control. So, being her relative, finally he got her out with full speed in safety, saved her dignity to the extent he could. Then, after he said, I take full responsibility for the situation till such time that the government is formed, that the government has been formed. As of now, we can expect the army to be in a wait and watch mode. But please remember one thing. Now, this is a regime change. The students feel they have done it themselves. Everybody feels that they have all contributed to overthrowing the government. So, people who have done this are unlikely to sit back under a military dictatorship. So, that also has to be understood. That after having done all this, that we have got liberation a second time, we have done this, now we will change our country, we will change our constitution, we will change everything, we'll make it an ideal country. Well, you can't do it under a military regime. So to that extent, I think the chief is also politically, his antennas are quite sensitive. He must be understanding that this is as far as he can go. But yes, the army is the instrument of last resort. And should anything untoward happen, should more instability occur, then we'll have to see. But yes, the army is there, it is watching. So it's too early for us to judge as to where this regime is going. I think we'll have to give it at least a month or two, definitely around 2 months, to see what direction they are taking. Presently, now they're all clutching at straws, trying to find out. President has dissolved parliament, they're getting ministers, they're getting people, they're promoting people, they're demoting people, they're transferring secretaries. So all sorts of things are happening. They are arresting all the known names which we know they're all under arrest. Most of them, their accounts have been frozen. So there's so much of flux. We have to wait for the flux to subside. Till that, then only can we make a judgment of it. It's too early now. But the fact of the matter is that as far as India's security is concerned, a strong security barrier to our east has been breached. A strong security barrier to our east has been breached. Hasina rooted out terrorism in her own style, but it was useful to us as well. She used the rapid action battalion, she used all sorts of things. There's no point talking about it here because it didn't pertain to us. But she handed over insurgents and terrorists to us. If you remember the founder of ULFA, Anu Shetia, he was handed it to us in 2015 itself. Now, go to an article in the Economic Times of 2018, 14 July. Then DG BSF KK Sharma, he says that the camps and hideouts of Indian insurgent groups across the country's frontier on Bangladesh soil have been reduced to almost zero. I quote. Economic Times, 14 July 2018. We have military cooperation. We have the Sampriti exercises in its 11th year. We had the naval exercises, Bangsagar, on the 50th anniversary of liberation in December 21. We had a joint bicycle expedition from Jessore to Kolkata. Military-wise, we have good relations. That was the state we had then. Now we have to prepare for another. Though the Jamaat-e-Islami doesn't get more than 7 to 8% of the vote share, it is focused, fundamentalist, and anti-Indian. There's no doubt about it. The BNP, Bangladesh National Party, is making polite noises now, but it has a history of anti-India sentiment. And this is reinforced by our total lack of interaction with the BNP. Even last week on 15th August, when many people went to pay homage to Sheikh Mujib and other iconic liberation fighters like Tiger Siddiqui, who was a sector commander in the Liberation War, the BNP, Jamaat combined, it stopped them, and it resulted in clashes. Imagine the havoc that can be caused to our entire Northeast and West Bengal if such forces get traction across our borders. While infiltration has significantly reduced, movement across is possible. We are seeing movement even from POK into India. We are seeing clashes in the Jammu region, as you're aware. Now, we have a significant immigration population in Assam and the rest of the Northeast. And they are huge fault lines. We know our own fault lines. We have Assamese versus Bengali. We have Assamese and Bengali versus Khasi. We have Kukis versus Meitei. We have Hindu Meitei versus Muslim Pangal. We have Assamese caste Hindu against immigrant Muslim. We have Nagas with Nagaland. You name it. All that an anti-India element has to do is to exploit these fault lines. On 15th August, if you remember, there was a report that ULFA has planted 24 bombs in 19 locations in Assam. Luckily, nothing happened, but our extremist organizations already getting emboldened by happening across the border. Also, the fomenting of trouble is not limited just to our northeast, but can happen in Bengal, Bihar, and go westwards, making it a huge communal problem. As far as ULFA is concerned, it is a rump organization now, but potential for mischief is always there. That is why they said they have planted 24 bombs in 19 locations. Nothing very much came out of it, but the fact is that they have started raising their heads. So this fomenting of trouble, not just Assam, but it can also go westwards into mainland India, making it a huge communal problem. I'm coming on to something else now. I'm coming on to the Rohingyas. Myanmar and Bangladesh have an adversarial relationship. Sheikh Hasina gave shelter to over 1 million Rohingyas. Some have come across from Bangladesh into India as well. The figures vary from 18,000 to 40,000. Though we don't have a refugee policy, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees has given them cards. The Rohingyas in Bangladesh are in refugee camps which are being fed by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. They have nothing to lose there. They have no job. They have no vocations. They have no future. They have no citizenship. Many are already indulging in drug running and other activities. They are ripe for recruitment by fundamentalists for terrorist activities across borders, whether it is in India, whether it is in Myanmar. And terrorism will get a boost unless the Rohingyas are managed well. And today, Bangladesh cannot manage the Rohingyas given the state it itself is. This is a life problem. The next issue is security of minorities. Depending on whichever newspaper you read, there are reports of between 205 to 278 attacks on minorities. These are businesses, places of worship, homes, all in 1 week, 5th August to 10th August. BSF has turned back people who tried to come across to India. Some of you might have seen that video of a BSF NCO speaking over a loud hailer across barbed wire border, speaking in Bengali to the people on the other side, telling them to hold on, telling them that they cannot cross because these are things which have to be dealt with at the governmental level, requesting them to go back. That situation has been diffused. But imagine if this gets out of hand. We will have even more Bangladeshis than we can handle now. For the border states, it will become a political, social, and law and order problem. Thankfully, Dr. Yunus has again made the right noises. He assured the PM in a telephone call on Independence Day that nothing will happen, the minorities are safe, tell your journalists to come and see. So let us see how this progresses. But the danger is very real. Now, to prevent any fallout from this regime change, we have to sort out our border security and our border management once more. The longest border, 4,097 kilometers of border, longest with any country. China is 3488, Pakistan is 3323, Nepal is 7051, Myanmar is 1643, Bhutan is 699. Now, 900 kilometers of this border remains to be fenced. Some of it is riverine, so you have floating border outposts of the BSF on boats and ships. A comprehensive integrated border management system is under implementation. This is going to take time. Only 61 kilometers have been done in Gubi district. Now we come back to the Bangladesh army again. They've got 10 divisions. 3 were newly raised as part of its blueprint for modernization. It was called Forces Goal 2030. That was okayed by Sheikh Hasina to keep the army happy, armies in the barracks, give them what they want. So they got 3 more divisions, total 10 divisions. What do they do with these 10 divisions? Yes, the Bangladesh military has no actual combat experience. Their experience is limited to peacekeeping and to counterinsurgency in the Chittagong Hill Tract, which is also stopped after they signed the peace treaty with the Shanti Bahini there. Yet their potential to stir up trouble in the Siliguri corridor, the narrowest portion is just 21 kilometers. This potential should not be dismissed out of hand. These 10 divisions come to, well, very, very roughly around 200,000 troops, could be a little lesser. They are around 14 to 15 armored regiments. They have commensurate amounts of artillery and air defense. It may not be a threat, but it can definitely be a nuisance, forcing us to task our own forces for this contingency, even as we look northwards towards China and westward towards Pakistan. So this would be the ultimate collusive threat of pincer from three sides. It is the military job to plan for contingencies. It may not happen, but it's a contingency, so we have to look at it. The next issue is water security. You know, the Ganga Waters Treaty signed in 1996 comes up for renewal after 30 years in 2026. The Ganga flows through into Bangladesh through the Farakka branch. It's a huge project. So after a visit in June this year, there were talks about sending a technical team to carry out renegotiation and to revitalize the treaty once again. India is the upper riparian in that case. Now, the possibility of this treaty also becoming collateral damage because of all this instability, that is also possible. It could become another point of discord like we already have with peace. And finally, we must acknowledge a perpetual cause of instability. More so in Bangladesh as compared to India because Bangladesh is a small country, and that is great power contestation in the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh occupies a critical geographical location. It is easier to influence a smaller country like Bangladesh as compared to a larger country like India. And you influence it through various means, all sorts of leverages, commercial, economic, military, educational, soft power. And given the situation in the Indo-Pacific, this game will continue. Others like Pakistan will look to align themselves with whoever suits their interest at the moment. And this is happening with most of India's neighbors, be it Maldives, Nepal, or Sri Lanka. And remember, the Bengal Delta is the most fertile area in the world, especially the Bangladesh portion. Even if all these threats do not manifest physically, what the regime change has done is to place our entire Northeast, place our entire Act East policy, place our entire neighborhood policy at risk. We can't afford this. The Northeast is very badly affected. We cannot go back to a situation of 1965 where all road, rail, and riverine links are cut off with no trade and no movement. And neither can they. They also know that. Neither can they. We had, just see what we've done. In 23-24, 2023-24, the bilateral trade between India and Bangladesh was $12.9 billion. Trade surplus 9.3 billion with us. That is fine. We are much larger economy, so we have more to export in terms of goods and services. I'm not an economist, but this much I can say. Compare this to India, Sri Lanka. Of course, Sri Lanka went through a bad phase, but we have an FTA with Sri Lanka. And India, Sri Lanka FTA notwithstanding, for the same period, 23-24, our trade was $4.3 billion. See the comparison. You should just go to the Ministry of External Affairs website and see the outcome document of Sheikh Hasina's visit to India. I mean, the scope is so vast, there's cooperation on everything. I'll read out connectivity, space, satellites, road, rail transportation, greening of the economy, blue economy, oceanography, maritime issues, digital partnership, healthcare, education, disaster management, fisheries. We also signed a MOU between our own staff college and their Defense Services Command and Staff College in Mirpur for cooperation in the field of strategic studies. So that is the state of affairs. Now, Dr. Ranade himself has written that in Bangladesh, nearly 40% of the youth in the age group 15 to 29 are in the NEET category, not in employment, education, or training. 18 million are jobless. 37 million face moderate to severe food insecurity in 2023. They raised electricity, utility, and gas prices thrice in the year, causing much hardship. Wealthiest 10% get 41% of the nation's income. Bottom 10% receive 1.3%. These are bread and butter issues. And why am I quoting all this? Because they impact the internal security of Bangladesh, which in turn impacts our security. As far as the corruption is concerned, I was just listening to something the other day. They have got the Russians are making a nuclear plant in a place called Rupur. The Russians are making a nuclear plant in Kudankulam. The Rupur plant has got slightly lesser capacity than the Kudankulam plant. true. But the cost of the Rupur plant is twice the cost of the Kudankulam. When you are laying railway tracks in Bangladesh, the cost of laying 1 kilometer railway track is far more than the cost of laying 1 kilometer in India. So that's the way corruption goes. So it was bound to explode, it will happen. There are two views about China. One, that it has a lot of investments there. It needs the ports to export. It needs entry through Myanmar. It needs stability in Bangladesh. So it wants a regime there which is stable. Now, they did remove Hasina because she was so pro-India that they felt threatened. But Bangladesh was in debt to China. Bangladesh military is fully equipped with Chinese weapons, aircraft, and ships. Their weapons, their rifles, their tanks, their artillery, everything is Chinese. Their aircraft are Chinese, their ships are Chinese. They've taken two Ming class submarines, and the Chinese have made that submarine base for them. It's all Chinese. So both India and China were playing to their strength. China had its BRI, we had our Act East policy. We were doing our thing, they were doing their thing. I'm not too sure whether they're happy about it, but the Chinese, maybe they wanted, maybe indirectly, they may not have directly influenced matters, but indirectly they're quite happy with the outcome because it put pressure on us. But at the same time, they did feel so threatened by Sheikh Hasina that it decided that it needed a BNP regime to further its own interests. If that be so, then it has also played a role. But that we will never get to know because there's no fact to it. There's no point. This is all conjecture. But China definitely could have done much more in pressurizing Myanmar to take back the Rohingyas. China has only given lip service to that. Maybe it suits China that let the Rohingyas be a sticking point. Bangladesh is under pressure. India is under pressure. We're not too sure about but the Bangladesh is so heavily indebted to China. Its entire armed forces are based on Chinese equipment. So I really don't know whether they were instrumental in this regime change. But I think the fallout of the regime change, as you said, they may not be happy, but they may, well, nobody likes instability in the places where they put money, but they'll try and make the best of it. It's not affecting them as much as it's affecting us because we are directly affected. We have a border. The Chinese don't have a border. And the instability doesn't spill over into China, but it spills over into India. So that is the difference. So even if they are concerned, they'll be a little less concerned. And if they're a little less concerned, whether to call them happy, well, that is a relative term. About Pakistan, Pakistan is not a major player. Pakistan relations with Bangladesh are almost zilch. Unless Pakistan manages to leverage the Islamic card through its proxies, like the Jamaat, it is unlikely to make major headway. Remember one thing which we forget that after 1971, almost two generations have come to adulthood in an independent Bangladesh. They are not going to come under somebody else's tutelage, come under a different flag. No. They are an independent country. They are proud of their independence and they make no bones about it that we are going to charter this thing. And they may show a thumb to us. They may show a thumb to Pakistan. They'll show a thumb to anybody, including the Americans. What they get out of it, maybe they'll cut off their own nose. But that is their state of mind as of now. Yes, the relations with Pakistan will get a little warmer, but I don't expect it to go back to pre-1971. Despite the reservations, not a single person in government has made any adverse remark on India. Single person in government. And the UN is watching. They've already, their Office of the High Commission on Human Rights has released a preliminary analysis of violence in Bangladesh on the 16th of August. Despite tremendous efforts over the years, which I recounted, the history of our cooperation, our old narrative didn't succeed. Possibly because of the widely held perception that we were only for Hasina. So we have to now look at the Maldives, where we've just done a course correction, and we need to do something similar here. First, for this, our commerce has to start. Luckily, I think just 2 days back, our freight trains have started. I also learned that in a month, there are 100 freight trains which go to and fro across the border. A passenger train will be starting this week, hopefully. Now, we have to look at issues which we haven't addressed before and relook our priorities. Whether it is infrastructure, climate change, giving a loan and sitting back is not enough. We have to get very, very actively involved and focus on people to people. And we have to bolster the military cooperation much, much further. We have to be very active about it. So some proactive steps from our side have to be taken. I'm sure the government has plans up its sleeve. Managing Sheikh Hasina is also going to impact our relation. That is a government decision. I don't see any major change in Bangladesh's foreign policy. There'll be a little distance from India and they'll continue to play off China and USA. And most importantly, I leave this thought with you. Let us wait for 16th December. That is the anniversary of the liberation. How that liberation day is celebrated will give us an idea of where this Bangladesh is going.